In the heart of New Orleans, just off the Mississippi River, nestled a dilapidated mansion known as the House of Whispers. Legend has it that the house was inhabited by the angry spirits of the LaRue family, a wealthy clan who mysteriously vanished in 1877, leaving behind only their tarnished reputations and an eerie silence. The only soul brave enough to step foot into this abandoned house was Mama Claudette, a quirky and eccentric voodoo priestess with a spark in her eyes and countless secrets tucked under her vibrant bonnet. For some reason, she wanted to connect and was able to communicate with the LaRue spirits. While she was hoping to finally provide them with peace, the universe sought other plans. Unknown to Mama Claudette, the LaRue family were a family of cannibals. Let's say they had their guests over for dessert. One stormy night, Mama Claudette decided to conduct her most daring ritual yet. The wind wailed, and lightning illuminated the ancient symbols she drew on the mansion's wooden floor. She began chanting in an inaudible and unknown language. She was allowing the supernatural to take over her body. Unknown to Mama Claudette, her body had been possessed by an unwelcome spirit that she had never encountered before. The temperature dropped, frost creeping over the once warm but vintage mahogany. Suddenly, the chandelier shook violently, the lights flickered, and a thunderous voice boomed, "Leave us." It was the patriarch of the LaRue family, his spectral form looming threateningly over the priestess. But Mama Claudette, with a defiant glint in her eyes, continued her chant undeterred. As the spiritual tension escalated, the room filled with smoke, and a blinding light flashed repeatedly. When it subsided, Mama Claudette was gone. She had vanished into thin air. In her place stood the LaRue family, no longer spirits, but flesh and blood. Looking bewildered, yet relieved, they now stood in modern attire. Not much is known of what happened next to the LaRue family. Some say they still live among us till this day, living normal lives in secret. But one thing is for sure, their curse was lifted, but at a horrifying cost. The House of Whispers earned its name that night. The home still stands abandoned, with supernatural occurrences being reported by thrill seekers looking to get to the bottom of the disappearances of the LaRue family and Mama Claudette. If you press your ears against the mansion's cold walls, they say you can hear the faint chants of Mama Claudette's screams for help. Her eerie calls echo the halls of the once prestigious mansion. Unfortunately for her, her calls will go unanswered for all of eternity. A chilling reminder of the price one can pay for meddling with the supernatural. In the small town of Devonridge, nestled amongst the rolling hills and dense woodlands, lived a man named Harold. Harold was known far and wide as the best mechanic around, able to fix anything from a sputtering tractor to a flashy sports car. He was a man of few words, but his reputation for skilled workmanship was enough to keep the townsfolk coming back to his old rusted garage. However, Harold had a secret, a dark secret that he kept buried deep within him. No one knew about it, not even the closest of his friends. The secret was as much a part of him as his gnarled hands and oil-stained overalls. One cold November night, a young woman named Lucy drove into town. Her car had broken down on the highway, and she sought help at Harold's garage. Lucy was at the beginning of her month-long cross-country trip to see the country and sights before starting her new demanding job in California. As Harold worked on her car, he couldn't help but notice her. She was beautiful, with bright blue eyes and a contagious smile. But there was something else about her that drew him in, a certain sadness in her eyes that he recognized all too well. Days turned into weeks, and Lucy became a regular at the garage. She would often bring Harold lunch, and they would sit together, talking about everything and nothing. The townsfolk started to gossip, but Harold didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt alive. But with this newfound happiness came an unbearable fear. He was afraid that Lucy would discover his secret and leave him. The thought of losing her was more terrifying than anything else. He knew she had a job waiting for her, but deep down, he didn't want their newfound romance to end. So he decided to do something he had never done before. He decided to share his secret with her, hoping his vulnerability would entice her to change her mind or extend her trip. One evening, under the cloak of darkness, he took her to his house. It was an old, dilapidated building, hidden away from prying eyes by the thick woods surrounding it. Inside, the house was as cold and lifeless as a tomb. He led her down a narrow staircase into the basement. The basement was unlike any other. It was filled with strange and grotesque objects, tools and parts of machines that seemed out of place. But what caught Lucy's attention was a large wooden box at the far end of the room. It was old and worn, its wood stained dark with age. Harold opened the box, revealing its contents. Inside were dozens of small mechanical dolls. They were exquisitely crafted, each one unique, but there was something unsettling about them. Their glass eyes seemed to stare back at her, their painted smiles frozen in a perpetual state of joy. "These are my creations," Harold said, his voice trembling. "Each one represents a person I've interacted with." Lucy looked at him, confusion etched on her face. "What do you mean?" Harold took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to say. "I'm not just a mechanic, Lucy. I'm a collector. I collect memories, emotions, experiences, and I put them into these dolls." He picked up a doll, its glass eyes identical to Lucy's bright blue ones. "This one is you," he said, handing it to her. She took it hesitantly, her hands shaking. "But how?" she started to ask, but Harold cut her off. "I can't explain it," he said. "It's something I've been able to do since I was a child. I can take a piece of someone's soul and put it into these dolls. It's how I remember them, how I keep them with me." Lucy looked at him, her eyes wide with fear. She dropped the doll, backing away from him. You're a monster," she whispered, turning to run. But Harold was faster. He caught her, his grip like iron. "I'm sorry, Lucy," he said, his voice filled with regret. "But I can't let you leave. Not now." With a swift movement, he took out a small, sharp tool from his pocket, a tool he used for his mechanical work. Before Lucy could react, he pressed it against her, and everything went black. Lucy's vehicle was stored at the garage. Harold had managed to repair it, but by the following morning, when patrons arrived at the shop, there was no sign of Harold. Lucy's car had mysteriously disappeared. The prevailing belief among the townsfolk was that Harold and Lucy had disappeared into the night together, swept away in a sudden romantic escapade. Regarding the actual destiny of Harold and Lucy, Harold returned to his solitary lifestyle, albeit with a new accomplice. he opted for a life on the move, drifting from one town to the next. During those quiet moments at night on the highway, when solitude would start to set in, all he needed to do was glance to his right, and there Lucy would be, accompanying him on his journey. He would often reach for a small mechanical doll with brilliant blue eyes and an irresistibly infectious smile. It served as a reminder of Lucy, preserving her memory just as she was the last time he laid eyes on her. His secret safely hidden once again. In the dimly lit cabin of Flight 666, the atmosphere was heavy with an unsettling tension. The hum of the engines drowned out the nervous whispers of passengers. Sarah, a seasoned flight attendant, moved through the narrow aisle, her smile hiding the unease that lingered beneath the surface. As the plane soared through the night sky, a passenger in seat 13A caught Sarah's eye. His demeanor was peculiar, eyes glazed, and an eerie grin etched across his face. Something about him sent shivers down her spine, but duty compelled her to approach. "Can I help you with anything, sir?" Sarah asked, her voice betraying a trace of anxiety. The passenger's eerie grin widened, revealing teeth that seemed unusually sharp. The shady passenger slowly removed a black leather glove from his hand, revealing a pale, clammy palm. Before Sarah could react, he lunged and grabbed her hand. A chilling sensation immediately shot through her, emanating from the point of contact. Panic ensued in the cabin as Sarah's uncontrollable screams pierced the relative cabin calm. The man's eyes blazed a demonic red, his grin now grotesque. The captain's voice echoed over the intercom, urging calm, but his words were drowned in a wave of terror. The chaotic nightmare at 30,000 feet had just begun. Sarah began to realize that she was experiencing an otherworldly alien energy pulsating through her veins, spreading rapidly. She realized with horror that the man's touch had unleashed something sinister within her. With every passing minute, the infection spread, turning passengers and crew into grotesque creatures. The once organized flight became a nightmare of blood-curdling screams and eerie silence. The cabin lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the contorted faces of the transformed passengers. In a desperate bid for survival, Sarah reached the cockpit, where the captain, now succumbing to the same fate, revealed the shocking truth as he gasped his last breaths. They were not merely traversing geological distance on Flight 666. The flight was a one-way ticket into a realm between worlds. They were crossing the thin line separating our world from that of a doomed dimension. A cursed purgatory where the infected roamed eternally. As the plane plunged into a blood-red abyss, painted blood red by the setting sun, Sarah's last vision was that of her fellow passengers, distorted, grotesque, and forever trapped in this airborne purgatory. Flight 666 was no ordinary journey. It was a descent into a nightmarish dimension where the horrors of the sky knew no end. A plunge into an unending nightmare, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the unseen corners of our world. This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror.